Hey y'all, welcome to this week's show. Today we're going to get into a couple of really interesting plants. We'll do at least, well, probably two edible plants from my spring foraging cookbook, and then probably get into two from the medicinal shrubs book. Yeah, they're all pretty interesting. One of them is really one of my favorites. You're going to really get into it. It's a Gaultheria or wintergreen. You're going to love that as a medicinal herb. But actually, the edibles are certainly two of my favorites. I mean, wild strawberry. Who doesn't like strawberries, right? I mean, strawberries are delicious. Now, a few months ago, I was talking with a friend of mine. She's a baker in California, a master baker. I mean, she's trained in baking, culinary art. Could be a chef if she wanted to. She could be a baker. She could do. She's an herbalist. She could do anything she wants. Very talented individual, very intelligent, and very independent. When I first started talking with her, and we became friends years ago, she was living in a tent in a national forest. You know, she, I guess, had an argument with a roommate or something. She got her two dogs and just went and lived in a tent. There are not many young ladies in their 20s that are just going to go live in a tent in the woods for a few months, are there? But she's pretty special, and she's a good friend of mine. Uh, we were talking about, I guess it was probably about this time last year, strawberries. And she said in California, the strawberries were horrible, which surprised me. I mean, we get so much produce out of California. She said they just have no flavor. They're like insipid. They're just not good. And she said even at the bakery, and she worked at one of the top bakeries, and I'm talking real high-end bakery. She's known for her croissants especially. She worked at one of the top bakeries at a ski resort town in California, and I mean, she said they just will not use the strawberries that the local farmers are producing because they're not good. You know, I have encountered that a few times. Where I grew up about half my childhood in North Carolina, down the eastern part of the state. You know, I was born in the mountains. After my parents divorced, lived in the eastern part of the state for 10 years or so. Then moved back up to the mountains. Really known for strawberry growing and really good climate for strawberry growing. My great grandfather grew some phenomenal strawberries. But the fields around there, it's kind of hit or miss. Sometimes you'll get a good strawberry, and sometimes it's like, man, this is kind of hard and woody, or it's watery and it just doesn't have any flavor. And yeah, that can have to do a lot with weather conditions, but more than anything, well, variety, of course, as well. You have your strawberries that are normally grown commercially, which only bear berries in, say, April and May, once a year. Or you have the ever-bearing perennial variety that are closer to the wild strawberries, generally much better in flavor, but smaller, and the market wants big, juicy strawberries. Well, over the past, I guess, 30 years or so, at least since NAFTA in the 90s, uh, the strawberry growers have been growing strawberries really with a focus not so much on flavor, but on storage capability. They want a big, firm strawberry that's going to last a week or two in the grocery store. And if it tastes like cardboard, so be it. They don't really care. Uh, they get more money for big, pretty red strawberries that last than they do for small, delicious, tasty, wonderful fruit. And so a lot of them just really don't care if their product tastes like cardboard. Um, some of them would argue with me, and I've had those conversations before. They say, this is what we have to do to market our strawberries. I'm like, but why the hell would anybody buy them if they don't taste good? Well, people buy them because they look good. And I'm like, yeah, well, I won't. Those are the conversations we often have. And I understand they have to do what they have to do to make their a living. So I don't fault them for it. But there are a lot of strawberry fields that were so wonderful when I was a child that we go back to every year and pick buckets full of strawberries that I will never go to again. I can think of one in particular. Not only were the strawberries kind of hard and woody, they had no flavor. but they were treated with a pesticide or something that made me sick when I ate them. It made my mother sick too. I stopped and said, "Let me grab a bucket of strawberries. You enjoy them." I thought she would. I went out there and I spent far more money than I should have for a bucket of strawberries that I picked myself. I mean, come on, you should charge less for pick it yourself than if you actually have to pay somebody to pick them for you and then sell them to the customer. But no, I paid a lot more money than I should have. And I asked, were these washed? And they said, yeah, they're washed. They're ready to go. You can eat them right now. Okay, great. Got in the car. I ate two or three. She ate two or three. We're both like, Dad, these aren't very good. And an hour later, we were very, very sick, um, essentially poisoned by the pesticides or whatever they had put on there. Could have been a chemical fertilizer. I have no idea. So these days, if I'm going to have strawberries, I generally like to grow them myself. And I like to grow heirloom strawberries, ever-bearing strawberries, which means a plant's going to produce two or three berries a week. It's not going to be this big flush, right? So you got to have several plants, and you're going to get a few berries off each one. But it's going to be throughout the season, spring through fall, really. I mean, even into the fall, sort of. Not late fall, but early fall. And they're delicious. They're small. When I say small, what would they be? The size of a quarter? Maybe a nickel. So around a nickel, let's say a nickel in size, as opposed to that big grocery store strawberry. But they have more flavor than five of those grocery store strawberries put together. They're delicious. So last year, the hurricane came through, Helene, and wiped out my strawberry beds. Literally all the topsoil, everything's gone. Okay. I mean, I grow stuff. I garden. I plant herbs. I plant vegetables. I plant all kinds of stuff. Um, the water came down from the mountain and the sky at one time so hard it literally washed everything away. Raised beds, stone bordered beds, topsoil, perennial plants ended up, you know, across the street and in the river somewhere. I mean, they're just gone. So I've got to start from scratch totally this year, and it's I should have been started before now, but I've got so much work to do on the house. I just don't have time to do a lot of gardening this year. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do. I need to have a garden this year. That's a big part of my lifestyle. It's something I really look forward to. It's a big part of my diet. I don't like a lot of the produce in the grocery stores, but I mean, 30 years of gardening in one spot was washed away in, 3 hours. I mean, the river went from 8 inches to 30 feet in 3 hours of rain. It was just ridiculous. I'm still cutting up trees. I'm still digging out, essentially. I've got to replace every bit of insulation in my house. I've got to replumb the entire house. I have to rewire part of the house. I have to replace walls, subflooring. I'm seriously, I'm cutting out the bases of walls. I'm cutting out floors. I've got to replace the subflooring. I got to put in or scab or sister the joists. I've got to shim up flooring. I've got to put in new ceilings. Uh, some roof work. The chimney has to be resealed. I mean, by the time I catch up, uh, just to say I'm caught up enough to think about planting a potato, it's going to be fall. So this year I'm really looking at wild strawberries, and I love wild strawberries. I've loved them since I was a child. I've been eating wild strawberries since I was probably 2 years old, if not younger. They're delicious, and I told you about how like the ever-bearing heirloom strawberries, like your alpine strawberries and such, are so much smaller. They're like the size of a nickel. A wild strawberry is usually about the size of a pea, but they have so much flavor. And you can go out and if you're persistent, and you find a good patch at the right time, you can gather wild strawberries. They're absolutely delicious. They have more flavor in that one little strawberry, maybe the size of a grape or a pea, somewhere in between the two. There's going to be more flavor in there than a pound of strawberries from the grocery store. And honestly, I hate to say it because I know how much the people, I mean, in my home state and all around, There's strawberry growers in Virginia and Tennessee and Georgia. I mean, everywhere I've lived. Um, they depend on that revenue, but if they keep growing strawberries, and I want to say making, I mean breeding varieties that are just for shelf life and have no flavor, I really hope people stop buying them. I mean, it's the only way you're going to get them to grow good strawberries again is if you don't buy the garbage that just looks good. And yeah, they're pretty. They're bred for looks. They're real pretty. They have no flavor at all. A lot of those sometimes you get candied or in a box or something. They may have actually been injected with something that gives them a little extra a little citric acid and sugar. I'm not saying they have. They may have. I've been told that some are chemically treated before they are put on store shelves. They are artificially ripened. They'll put them in an environment with a certain gas that causes them to turn red. It doesn't make the sugars come out. It just turns them red and bright. Yeah, it's not good. So anyway, wild strawberries and blueberries and blackberries are going to be my fruit this year, unless something really dramatic changes. I don't necessarily need like to win the lottery or something. I need actually a bunch of handymen and builders in the area to not have 10,000 jobs essentially ahead of me. I mean, everybody in the region has damage, and everybody needs help, and everybody's booked solid. So, I got to do so much of it myself that I don't see a garden happening this year. There is a really outside chance. This is like so outside. I mean, I'm thinking about it. I'm praying about it. There's a little bit of land in South Carolina where maybe I could spend the winter and basically just camp out on the land and have a fall winter garden. I wouldn't mind that in the least. I'd love to have some good collard greens and turnips and mustard and everything I love like that, and be there for the shad run in January when the shads start running upstream from the ocean. It's a form of herring, and they're just delicious. And of course, you'd have oysters and crabs and all that through the winter. It would really be worth it. I don't know if I can really afford it. Don't know if it's going to work out. Don't know if I even have time to go down and view the property with everything I've got going, to tell you the truth. But yeah, so unfortunately, probably no garden this year, which is really an odd thing to say for me. Really, I mean, I grew up on a farm. I'm not a person that says, well, I'm not going to have a garden this year. No, I don't like buying produce from the store. The reason I don't like buying produce from the store is it's not good. 9 times out of 10, it's just not good. But anyway, so we talked about wild strawberries. They are small, as I said. The only real look-alike is the false wild strawberry. Also, not poisonous. It just doesn't have any flavor. It looks sort of like a strawberry. It's a little red berry. Um, the texture of it's different. The flavor is totally different. If you taste one against the other, you're gonna know which one's a strawberry. But recently well, this has been years ago. It's not recently. It's probably 5 years ago. I was on Facebook, and someone posted just a frantic post. My grandchild just ate what looks to be a wild strawberry. Do I need to take her to the hospital? And I responded to her, no. If it looks like a strawberry, if it smells like a strawberry and tastes like a strawberry, it's a strawberry. That's where we get strawberries from. We bred them from wild strawberries, and here's a picture, and she, oh, that's great. I'm so afraid of her eating wild food. And I'm like, okay. It's like I say, if it looks like an onion, smells like an onion, it's an onion. If it looks like a grape and tastes like a grape and smells like a grape, it's a grape. If it looks like a strawberry and smells like a strawberry and tastes like a strawberry, it's a strawberry. There are some poisonous red berries, don't get me wrong. But you want to look at the leaf, look at the flower, and look at the berry. And frankly, I think a 5-year-old could probably identify a wild strawberry without any reference. I know I could, and certainly did. I ate tons of them when I was a toddler. I'd crawl along, and probably before I could walk, I'd just crawl along and eat wild strawberries. I mean, I don't get it. I don't get people So anyway, you can absolutely enjoy strawberries fresh, just eating out of hand. Everybody does that. You can cook them, especially wild ones are probably a little better cooked, with some sugar and lemon juice, make some preserves or jam. And that's so good. I mean, a hot buttered biscuit, I mean, a real biscuit made with butter and lard and buttermilk. I mean, yeah. Um, you can flavor that if you want to have a more complex flavor. You can flavor your strawberry jam or syrup or whatever you're doing with some mint or basil or even black pepper. Oddly enough, that's really traditional. Going back to ancient Rome, combining strawberries with black pepper was very common, and honey. I mean, those like three things would go together a lot. It doesn't have to be strawberries, but other fruit or berries, they often put black pepper and a little bit of salt on. Um, it takes a little getting used to, but the pepper does actually enhance the flavor. Salt certainly does. Violet blossoms are good with strawberries. I've never found enough wild strawberries at once to make wine. If you did, strawberry wine is just fantastic. Super easy to make. Crush your berries. Um, I would use, if I had a gallon of strawberries, I'd crush them down as best I could. Don't worry about straining everything out. I mean, a lot of it's going to break down during the fermentation process, but mash them up real well and combine with that about a gallon of water and let's say 2 pounds of sugar. That may be too much. Between a pound and 2 pounds of sugar and a little lemon. And then adds your yeast and just let it ferment. And it's going to make a nice wine. Now you could do it with just strawberry juice alone if that's all if you had enough. I mean, I'm not saying if that's all you had, it's if you have enough. Um, the leaves of wild strawberry or cultivated strawberry are edible as well. It's in the rose family and the geranium family and all that. And when they're tender, when they've just come out, you can absolutely put them in a salad. They're tasty, a little tangy. They're astringent though, so you don't want to eat too much. It could kind of dry you up, plug you up actually. But for that reason, the leaves of wild strawberry are very good for diarrhea, sore throat, and all that. So another one I want to do, the last of the wild edibles for the day, is winter cress. Now this was an interesting one. When I was a kid, my parents had a grocery store. It had been the family for a few generations, and it was in a resort town in the mountains of North Carolina where we had lots of European folks that came in for the summer. They would summer here and then go back to wherever they came from in Europe, Austria, France, Switzerland. There were tons of Swiss, actually. Germans, tons of Germans, English, you name it. We got them from all over. Mostly very wealthy people. And they had private chefs. They had chauffeurs. I mean, it was, kind of different. I mean, we actually stocked wine cellars for some of the wealthiest people in the entire world. And I'm not kidding. I could name names, but I mean it was no big deal at all. And this is 1970s, 1980s, for one of these people to come up in a chauffeur-driven Bentley Rolls Royce, and maybe they'd walk inside. They'd usually send their hired help in and order 50 cases of Dom Perignon. I mean, and Lafite Rothschild, Chateau Lafite, or I mean, expensive wines that I can't even imagine buying. They'd buy it by not just a case, but like almost a truckload, and they fill their wine cellars, imported cheeses. Um, yeah, I mean, it was real high end stuff. One of the more interesting things they bought, which I mean, I remember even as a kid being aware of, was called creasy greens. Now, these were sold in cans. It was a can, and inside it had greens, which to me as a kid were kind of like turnips or mustard, I mean, I thought, well, this is cool. Well, the local mountain folk, who were the polar opposite of those rich people that also shopped with us, we had a little tavern and such. They buy their groceries, they come in, they sit down, have a beer and a sandwich, maybe shoot a little pool, just salt of the earth, hard working. A lot of them were carpenters. They couldn't work in the winter, so they spent all day at the tavern drinking beer and smoking cigarettes, and Um, not people with a lot of money, people with, rusted out old trucks. They were also crazy about creasy greens. They would buy them in the can, just like the rich people did, or, and they really look forward to it each year, they go out and harvest them themselves. And what that was winter cress. Now, of course, they would also eat poke salad and dandelion greens and all that. But winter cress was called crease or creasy. And I don't think you can find it in the store anymore, but you can absolutely harvest it. It's a lot like wild mustard in texture and flavor. And if it wasn't for the shape of the leaves, you really couldn't tell apart. They taste the same. They smell the same. I mean, the flowers are also similar in appearance. The two plants sprout about the same time. And in all honesty, I just gather them together. And I don't care what's winter cress and what's a mustard. I just pull it up, toss it in the basket or bag, and, I'm good. Or cut it off the top, it depends. They go into the same bag, and I cook them together. I mean, I don't even sort them out once I get home. They're a little sharp and a little tough to be eaten raw, but cooked. In a can, if you think of like canned spinach, they were kind of like boiled down like that. It's better if you cook them in just an open pot because, like all members of the Brassica family, they have certain chemical compounds. I think it's cyanide gases. I think that's right. That are actually in the cells of the plant. They don't hurt you or anything, but when you cut them, they're released, and that's why when you cut, brassicas, mustard, collards, kale, they smell. But when you cook them, they smell really strong, right? You want to always cook your brassicas in an uncovered pot. That even includes broccoli and such. Cauliflower, I mean, you name it. Cabbage, certainly. Yeah, it's going to stink, but it doesn't stink any less if you put a lid on it. What it does is if you put the lid on it, those gases begin to escape. They gas off, but they'll go up and hit the condensation, the steam against the lid, and then they actually turn into the toxic form of cyanide. I believe that's right. I don't think it's arsenic. I think it's cyanide. And it drips back down to the vegetables. That would then turn your vegetables, your greens, from a nice bright emerald green to a dull drab olive brown gray. And it destroys the flavor, it destroys the texture, it makes them stink worse actually, and it takes away a lot of your nutrition. So with any greens, cook them with the lid off. Never put your lid on the greens. Now you can boil these if you want. That's totally your right and privilege, whatever. If you go and harvest them or you get any kind of brassicas, you can boil them. If you do, I think boiling them in some chicken broth or something is better than just plain water. What we do in my family, what I prefer, is to take my greens, whether these are mustard or collards or kale or turnips or you name it, right? Take your greens, wash them, leave the water on there, just kind of shake them off a bit so they're not dripping on the floor. I mean, leave as much on there as you can, really. Chop them. I chop them large, big, ribbons, big strips, and put them in a hot pan in which you put a little bit of lard. If you don't have lard, you can certainly use oil. It's not going to hurt anything. Lard's nice. Bacon drippings are perfect, actually. That's really the best. Put them in there, and then add some salt. And within just a few minutes, they'll start to cook down, and you'll need to stir them with a spoon. About 10 minutes, they're done. They're not overcooked. They have a nice, good green color. The smell will gas off very quickly. They become very savory aroma, very tasty. They'll be sweet, and that's really the difference when you cook them with the lid on, and that cyanide comes back onto there. It makes them bitter, and that's why people add sugar and such to their collard greens because they're trying to counter the bitterness. Actually, if you cook them the right way, you never need to put sugar on your greens. I just cook them down till they're tender enough to eat. Take one out, chew it. Is it tender? If not, give them another minute. No big deal. I don't even cut the ribs out of stuff. Just cook it until it's tender enough, and I like a little chew. And then serve them with hot pepper vinegar. And that's nothing more than apple cider vinegar in which you pickled a few hot peppers, jalapenos, Tabasco, whatever you want to put in there. Cayenne really probably makes about the best. Green cayenne peppers before they've been dried. Really, really good. Really, really good. One of the best ways to use Winter cress, because you're probably not going to get as much of it as if you had a big old head of collards or something, is to include in a soup. It makes it, if you get enough, have a side dish of it. I mean, absolutely. But as a soup's really good. In Asian grocery stores, you'll see pickled mustard greens, and they're very good. I don't often get to an Asian grocery store, but pickled wintercress, done the same way, whether it's a fermented pickle or a vinegar pickle. Very good. Nice little side dish for a heavy meal. It aids with digestion. It cleanses the palate. Actually very good. You can use the greens raw or pickled in soups. When you add it to a soup, you're adding that little kind of vinegary taste to it. So think like a Chinese hot and sour soup, or like a German sauerbraten, where you've got basically a sweet and sour sauce that goes with some roast pork. Excellent way to do it. The traditional German sauerbraten usually uses vinegar and crushed ginger snap cookies. I know, it sounds weird. It tastes great. I'm not a big fan of sweets in food, but I make like two exceptions. Well, three. I make three exceptions, okay? And the third, the one that just came to my mind, is the Chicago style hot dog. That's the one hot dog I'll eat that has relish on it, and it's a sweet relish. Somehow it just works with the celery salt and the dill pickle and the pickled tomato. And I mean, in all honesty, I'd probably rather have it without the relish, but I never think to order it without the relish. And you get that weird neon blue relish on there, and you bite into it, and it's like, yeah, that's the Chicago style hot dog, and that's really good. I mean, my favorite hot dog is just sauerkraut and mustard, maybe a little hot sauce, but Chicago style is, I mean, if it's a good one, maybe the best hot dog in America. I mean, coming from North Carolina, we get our hot dogs with chili and slaw and onions and mustard, and I mean, I can shove those things down my throat about as fast as anybody can serve them to me, but that Chicago style red hot is actually really good. It actually is really good. But anyway, the other would just sort of be teriyaki. I do. I'm not a huge fan, but every now and then some teriyaki pork, and I certainly don't mind if there's some pineapple with it. I mean, that's just traditional. But the sauerbraten, which is usually a pork roast, served with cooked with vinegar and crumbled ginger snaps, surprisingly good. I mean, it actually is surprisingly good. It's not something I would go for every day, but every now and then, it's actually very good. So, I mean, if you like that, you could definitely use the pickled wintercress along with the crumbled ginger snaps, or instead of cookies, what I would do, I would cover the meat either with the pickled wintercress or mustard or sauerkraut. Of course, I make my own kraut, but really any kind, of pickled vegetables. So whether you had kraut or just any kind of sour pickled vegetables, and then use some spices. I mean, and that's really more traditional to the recipe. The use of ginger snaps has only come about in the last 100 years. Going back 2, 3, 500, 1,000 years ago, they made the exact same dish using sauerkraut, using vinegar, whatever they had, and spices, because the spice trade was really big in the Middle Ages. And so they'd have cinnamon and ginger and cloves, coriander and mustard seed, and a handful of raisins, dried grapes, glass of a low-acid wine or a beer. That's really the origins of the recipe, and if I'm going to make it, that's more the way I like it. A few raisins don't add a lot of sweetness to the dish. The spices, the cinnamon, ginger, clove, it's more, they're considered sweet spices, but they don't actually have any sugar to them. They just we associate them with cookies, And then, some mustard seed and coriander, give it that good background flavor. Same kind of thing you'd put in corned beef or something like that. And the wine and beer, just bring everything together, and it's really good, actually. It really is good. If I'm going to make a sauerbraten, that's sort of the way I do it. And, I mean, serve it up with some potato salad, and you are set. I mean, that is truly phenomenal. And of course, if you want to put some sweet pickle relish in your potato salad, that's very traditional. Not going to look down on you for that, but yeah, I mean, no, seriously. Sometimes you get a sour broth that's just way too sweet, or it's too sweet and too sour. If you do it the way I just said, using raisins as the only sweetener, and using the spices as opposed to the spice cookies, it's going to blow your mind. I mean, it really will. That's a reason to buy a pork butt. I mean, it's just really darn good, actually. So now let's get on to our medicinals for the week. And the first, well, I just got a note. This isn't a medicinal plant at all, actually. Well, that's not true. It does have some limited medicinal use. One of the most common plants you're going to find in the Appalachian Mountains in North Carolina is Galax. You will find this well into Virginia. There's a whole town up there called Galax, Virginia. You'll find it anywhere in the Appalachian Mountains, actually, probably from Alabama and Georgia up to New York. And Galax is just a low-growing evergreen plant. Nice, large leaves. Well, not large, maybe 3 inches across. They're mostly gathered and sold to florists for flower arrangements. That's actually been one of the traditional ways that mountain people have made money. Just gathering huge bundles full of Galax, baskets full, and selling them for florists. They're not much used medicinally. However, Plants for a Future tells us that this plant is used for healing all kinds of wounds and cuts. And an infusion of the root is used to treat kidney problems. Okay, that's actually news to me. I grew up in the mountains. I grew up being taught by herbalists, professional herbalists, who gathered herbs to sell to the Wilcox Company, who then sold them on to every vitamin and herb company you can imagine. They made their living harvesting herbs. They also used herbs in herbal medicine. They said Galax didn't have any use herbally. They would gather baskets full of it and sell it for florists. That was a part of the way they made their money. They'd also cut wood and do different things. Trap when fur prices were up, and you name it, right? So I never knew you could use Galax. I literally have tons of Galax all around my house, and on any given day, in 5 minutes, I could fill my truck bed full of it. So we're going to give this a shot this year. Well, hopefully, maybe not. I mean, hopefully I don't get any wounds and cuts or have any kidney problems, but I am going to keep this in mind. And if I get cut, if I have a wound or something, my kidneys, knock on wood, God willing, they've always been fine. Hopefully they always will be fine. We'll give this a try. So Galax, interesting. That's, what's the Latin name? Galax, Galax urquillata. This is not the way you pronounce it. Urceolata. More of a mountain plant. If you're at a lower elevation, you may never see it. But you'll see it in flower arrangements, and unless they've treated it with something, if it's just dried out, it could potentially still be medicinal. I don't know. You'll have to look into that. Ask your florist if it's been sprayed with something, right? So, now one that is much more widespread is Gaultheria. It is wintergreen. There are 37 varieties of Gaultheria that have documented use in herbal medicine. Grows on various continents. There are a lot of varieties of it. Only one native to my region, and it's Gaultheria procumbens, one of the most common in America. It's called wintergreen or teaberry. Super popular up until very recent times as an ingredient in gum and candy. I mean, your teaberry gum. Wintergreen was really popular through the 1800s, but then they found they could get wintergreen extract from birch twigs. And so at that point, I would say the Gaultheria wintergreen was probably over-harvested, so it's a good thing they did. After that, they started using that wintergreen extract from the birch twigs for making liniments, for making candy, for making root beer. And it's good. It's really good. I would actually say in many cases it's superior to true wintergreen because it also has salicin. It has that aspirin-like component to it. Wintergreen proper was used by the Lumbee as a tea to treat chronic indigestion. Also, the leaves were chewed for dysentery and tender gums. Tea was made from the leaves for colds, and the Algonquin people used wintergreen in an infusion to treat colds and headache and various types of discomfort. It's got that salicin compound. It's more pronounced in the birch twig, so the birch has more of the salicin. But yeah, wintergreen actually does have some. The Towards an American Materia Medica, one of my favorite books. This was the first herbal really written in the United States. It was written by the settlers, and that's why it's called Towards an American Materia Medica. They were learning to use the native plants from the Native Americans, and which, that's a contradiction in terms. There's no such thing as a Native American. It's just the Native Americans or Indians or whatever you want to say got here 1,000 years before the white people did. Maybe a few thousand years in some cases, but there was a time when North America was not populated at all, neither was South America. And so everybody's an immigrant in the United States. People like to say, well, this land belongs to the Indians, and they were invaded by the white people. And it's like, well, okay, but they just got here a couple of centuries before the Spanish. What gives them more of a right than, okay, whatever. Just lay the politics down. It's all stupid when you get down to it. But Towards an American Materia Medica says, the Gaultheria procumbens, which we call mountain tea, is spread very extensively over the more barren, mountainous parts of the United States. It belongs to the same class as the plants mentioned also under wintergreen, by the way, and we've talked about those as well, chimphala and such. I have made a strong infusion of this plant, which is evidently possessed of a stimulant and anodyne quality. I am told it has been found useful as medicine in cases of asthma, but I have not learned to what particular form this disease is best adapted, nor in what manner it operates. Skipping ahead a good 150 years, we get to Resources of the Southern Fields and Forests, where he talks about the same plant under different names: spicy wintergreen, partridge berry, mountain berry. The botanist, who was French, working for the Confederacy, found it growing in the mountains of the Carolinas, South Carolina and North Carolina. And it does. It's I won't call it common, but it's not uncommon. He says the whole plant is aromatic. It possesses stimulant aromatic properties united with astringency. Hence, it is used with advantage in some forms of chronic dysentery. It is said to have some anodyne power. The infusion of the leaves has been found beneficial in amenorrhea attended with debility, and in promoting the mammary secretion when deficient. In the Revolutionary War, it was used as a substitute for tea. The berries, which are aromatic and pleasant, are employed to flavor spirituous liquors. An infusion of them in brandy is a convenient and useful substitute for the ordinary bitters. An essential oil is obtained from the leaves by distillation. From Mr. Proctor's examination that was in the American Pharmaceutical Journal, it is shown to possess acid properties and to have the same composition as the salicylate of methylene. In other words, it has some salicin, it has some aspirin. It is one of the heaviest of the essential oils, having a specific gravity of 1.173 with a burning aromatic taste, mixing with alcohol or ether in all proportions. Let's see. Oh, good to diminish the sensitivity of nerves affected by carious teeth. That means sore teeth from cavities, essentially toothache. It can numb them out. And to disguise the taste and smell of nauseous medicines. Going forward a good 50 years, we're up to King's American Dispensatory of 1898. They talked about it being native to the southern United States from Florida to Maine. Well, from the south through the north, actually. So from Florida to Maine and westward to Pennsylvania and Kentucky. And this is true. It grows in cool, damp woods, sandy soils, and on mountains. Let's see if we got some medicinal. Well, first of all, it says the leaves contain an odorous volatile oil which may be obtained in the same manner as oil of peppermint. And wintergreen and peppermint are very similar, actually. It is the chemical constituents. All right. Actions, medicinal uses, and dosages. Wintergreen possesses stimulant, aromatic, and astringent properties. It is used in infusion as in an infusion, as an astringent in chronic mucus discharges, as a diuretic in dysuria, as an emmenagogue in stimulation in case of debility. That means it brings on menses, in other words. And it's said to augment the flow of the lactive. It also helps increase mother's milk. Let's just get through the big words. Um, it is recommended valuable for rheumatism, arthritis, also for muscular cramping as a liniment. And of course, it would be. It has aspirin in it, right? The infusion and essence both relieve irritation of the urethra and bladder and are adopted in the incipient stages of renal inflammation. It's kidney issues. Tubal nephritis is said to have been arrested by it, even when the examinations revealed in the urine the presence of blood. So really good for kidney issues. Wow. Anyway, for specific indications and uses, used for cystitis, prostatic irritation, undue sexual excitement. In other words, it could actually, could help with premature ejaculation. Let me just put it that way. Renal inflammation. They mention a few related species. Getting into the 1920s, Jethro Kloss said it was stimulant, antiseptic, astringent, diuretic, emmenagogue, and aromatic. He said this is an old-fashioned remedy. Taken in small and frequent doses, it will stimulate the stomach, heart, and respiration. Useful in chronic inflammatory rheumatism, also rheumatic fever, sciatica, diabetes, and bladder troubles, scrofula, and skin disorders. Valuable in colic and gas in the bowels. Helpful in dropsy, gonorrhea, stomach trouble, and obstruction of the bowels. He said the oil of wintergreen used externally made a good liniment. Used as a poultice, good for boils, swellings, ulcers, and inflammations. A douche could be used for leukorrhea, and also good as a gargle for sore throat and mouth. And you may notice my voice isn't quite right today. I woke up with a terrible sore throat and a little swelling of the glands, so I could probably use some of this stuff right now. Tongue's a little swollen too. I'm not sure exactly what's going on. Anyway, getting up to 1960s, Bradford Angier. Interesting character. Y'all know how much I love the works of George Leonard Herder. Well, if George Leonard Herder had a protege that he never met, presumably, it would have been Bradford Angier. Herder wrote dozens of books, fascinating books full of useful information, from recipes to camping to hunting to you name it. He was an outdoorsman. He wrote some of the best cookbooks in America. Avid fisherman, usually putting those useful tips of information into outlandish tall tales. He was either a little nutty or had the best sense of humor possible. And I think that's it, because he really did seem to be absolutely brilliant. Well, Angier comes along 20, 30 years later from George Herder, so next generation at least. And he wants to write outdoor books like Herder did. And he wrote some classics. He wrote some of the best books on foraging, on how to stay alive in the woods. That's been featured in movies and television. It's one of the classics. That's the title, How to Stay Alive in the Woods. He plagiarized a lot, a lot. Like taking other people's works entirely and putting his own name on them. And he made up a lot of stuff, apparently, maybe not, but still, and his wife was a very good artist, so when it comes to his wild food and herbal medicine books, which were really hard to find in the 60s and 70s when he was writing them, nobody was doing it. It was like him and Yule Gibbons, and that was it, right? Well, his wife was actually given illustrations, so they're actually real classics, and he's a character. What can you say? He ripped off a few of Herder's books. He ripped off a few here and there. He had some guts about him. He was audacious. You got to admit that. But a lot of his stuff's really good, and it's solid information. He wrote of this, he said, the Indians passing along their pre-Columbian lore to settlers long considered the leaves to be an important remedy for arthritis and overexerted muscles and joints. Perhaps a reason you can still smell it in locker rooms and trading quarters. Oil of wintergreen, like I said, does no longer come from the wintergreen plant, but yes, it's still very much used in liniments and rubs and such. Steeped into a tea, it was drunk for this purpose and also used as a gargle for sore throats. Question to poultices, it was applied externally to aching and painful parts, including those arising from lumbago. Such poultices were placed on the swellings of boils, carbuncles, felons, wounds, rashes, eruptions, inflammation, and even on aching teeth. He mentions it being antiseptic. He says the Penobscot tribe was believed to be helpful in treating gonorrhea. The Sioux, Nez Perce, and others stop it. Used it for the salicin content, for headaches, arthritis, aching muscles. He said it was good for hoarse and sore throats, wounds, used to staunch bleeding even. It has some coagulant properties, good for the kidneys and bladder, helpful in dropsy, and the tea used astringent for reducers and as an antiseptic wash. Botany a Day says the leaves contain phenolic glycoside methyl salicylate, and like willow can be used as aspirin. That's brief. Okay, groovy. Okay, plants for a future listed as checkerberry, and talks about how to make oil of wintergreen and how useful it is. Related to aspirin is an anti-inflammatory. My gosh, the swollen tongue is hard to talk with. The species at one time was a major source of methyl salicylate. That's true. It was over-harvested for a while. But then they found they could use birch twigs, so that's good. Some caution advised. Could be toxic in excess if you were using the essential oil. So, as always, I say don't use essential oils internally, unless you really have a good reason to and you're an expert, whatever. Pearson Field Guide for Eastern and Central Medicinal Plants says traditionally leaf tea was used for cold, headaches, stomach aches, fevers, kidney ailments. Externally is a wash for rheumatism, sore muscles, and lumbago. Essential oil and leaves was synthetically produced for the wintergreen formula. So I guess so they figured out a chemical way to imitate the essential oil. I guess that's what they're saying. Experimentally, it's analgesic, carminative. That means it helps settle the stomach and make you stop burping, basically. Anti-inflammatory, antiseptic. The inexperienced small amounts have delayed the onset of tumors. Interesting. Warning, the essential oil is highly toxic and can be absorbed through the skin and harms the kidneys and liver. I don't like essential oils. And I know it's going to upset a lot of people. I mean, ex-girlfriend of mine was an aromatherapist. Everything she did was with the essential oils. I don't... remember, essential oils are not a natural form of an herb. As such, they're far more potent, and they can burn the skin, like this, absorb through the skin, damage the liver. I don't like them. They do have their use, they do have their place and purpose, but when and if I use them, I use them in a diluted form. I dilute them with a neutral oil, usually olive oil. It's up to you if you want to use essential oils or not. That's not my school of herbalism. I'm not big on them, honestly. Now, I mean, a lot of people are, and they do certainly have use in their place, but it's just not my thing. So I do, however, really like wintergreen. My favorite gum is actually teaberry gum, or, blackjack. That's a licorice gum. Impossible to find these days. You can find them in Mass General Store around here, or some places that specialize in old candy. I like Big Red, the cinnamon flavored gum. I do like, herb and spice flavored gums quite a bit. Clove's probably my favorite, actually. But yeah, I like the taste of wintergreen. I like it actually quite a lot, and I do use this plant when I find it. And the Chimpodium, the alligator or spotted wintergreen, that is really more prevalent in North Carolina, much lower, much weaker in flavor and medicinal potency. I use them when I find them, and they're really good plants. Trying to overharvest them, try to grow some if I can. And actually, you may be able to find wintergreen seeds the Gaultheria in certain seed catalogs. I believe even Burpee or Vesey, one of the big, maybe Park, one of those three, I'm sure it's one of them, actually carries those seeds in their catalog. So it's one you can get going in the garden, and if you do, it's a pretty little plant and very useful. You're not going to regret it. So definitely do that. All right, y'all, have a great week, and I'll talk to you next time.